Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Hamza Idris. Welcome back. Tonight on the program, we will be hearing from the horse's mouth as Senator Smart Adeyemi joins us to discuss the proposed bill on banning same-faith joint ticket and other matters. You're welcome to the program.
It's my pleasure being here. Thank you.
Good. Many people were surprised when you said you will sponsor a bill to ban to amend the Electoral Act so as to ban same-faith ticket for the presidential election. Is it because of the Tinubu-Shetima ticket, or you have this for a very long time in your mind?
Well, once again, thank you for inviting me. As a lawmaker, I have a job to do, and the job is to see how I can make laws that will help to maintain peace, stability, and that will equally help in the socio-economic development of our nation. Let me say this before I go further, that I have absolute confidence in the APC winning with Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu as the presidential candidate and Kashim Shettima. And my support for them is not because they are APC.
Okay.
It is because I know them as individuals.
And you, APC also.
And I'm in APC. But if you check my track record and my antecedents, I don't speak what I don't believe. Whatever I say it based on my conviction that that is the right thing to say. And I take position on the basis of my understanding of Nigeria. I want to speak the mind of Nigerians, irrespective of their tribe or their religion. I speak against the background of the feelings of the man on the streets. So when I speak their voice, and I meditate a lot before I open my mouth to make any presentation. Now, having said this, let me equally say that both Shettima and Tinubu are people I knew over the years, over the decades. When I was the NUJ national president, I had a lot of interaction with Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu as governor of Lagos State. And he gave support to the media, the union, without sentiments. Kashim Shettima is my personal friend, and I knew him from 12 years ago or so.
Okay.
And I know that they are not religious bigots. I know they have large hearts. I know they are people that I can call statesmen.
And I think that is why people, because they know your relationship with them, were shocked of sorts that you are now contemplating.
Quite a number of Nigerians didn't understand the perception of which I was coming with the amendment. The amendment is not to talk about an issue that has already been settled. You cannot go to INEC to change anybody's name. You cannot withdraw any candidate whose name has been submitted to INEC. It's a trend that's already moving. The proposed amendment is to safeguard the future. You know, when there is an oversight, the first time, second time, if it happens the third time, some people may take it as a policy. Now, I have a privilege of knowing this country very well because of my background as a journalist, as a union leader. I travel around the nooks and corners of this country. There's no state of Nigeria that I do not know at least 2/3 of each state that constitutes the federal
as an activist, yeah.
So I know the whole of Nigeria. I know the norms and values of Nigerian people. I know the dichotomy. I know the religious spread of this country. And let me give you a submission here for the first time. There's nobody, no Nigerian, can tell me that Muslims are more than Christians or Christians are more than Muslims. If there's a situation where one is more than the other, maybe about 4 or 5%. Because many Nigerians today who are politicians, they are not leaders because they are elected, but that is not to say that they know the people that they are representing. That is not to say that as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you know Nigeria. No. There are quite a number of my colleagues whose knowledge of Nigeria is limited to maybe their geopolitical zone at the best. But I have the privilege to have traveled around this country. And you know what? One thing that can ignite problem in Nigeria is religion. More importantly, at this period of our history, and it's a global problem of global recession, where you have a large army of people who are unemployed, who are jobless, where people are taking to religion as a profession, and they want to be seen to be championing their faith. Now, if we allow them to have their way, they will set this country on fire. I've watched reactions of some Christians that are unpalatable to me as a Christian. I've seen some imams speaking the way I didn't expect them to speak about Nigeria. You know, every religion trying to say our religion is better or we are cheated, you know. But again, you see, it's a country where people become fanatical because they want to be heard. They want to be seen to be,
And more so, this is election season.
This election season.
But so, how do you intend to now?
So this bill, this amendment, is to put in place a legislation for the next dispensation, not this dispensation. I'm campaigning for Tinubu, I'm campaigning for Shetima. I'm campaigning for them because if you ask me, well, maybe it's the will of God that these two men should come this time around. So, and I have no quarrel about it. And I believe in them being able to pilot the affairs of our nation to a higher level. So the bill, the amendment, is basically to forestall a situation where this will come up again and people will say, oh, this is a policy, and go and start sponsoring problem for the country. And you know, my fear for Nigeria is that maybe unlike privileged people like you, I don't have another passport. I have only one passport.
I'm just a reporter.
You know? So I have only one passport, and I don't have citizenship of another country than Nigeria. So God forbid, if there's a problem in this country, there's nowhere I can run to, because the only nation I have as my own is Nigeria. And it's my interest too that I'm passionate about Nigeria. I live here. I treat myself in Nigeria. In the last 8 years, I have not traveled out of this country. It's not 8 years. I've not left Nigeria.
And I go abroad oversight.
I don't go. You know, there are many oversight.
Anyway, I'm joking. Oversights are done here.
No, but there are people
you see senators traveling.
Yes, of course, they have every reason to travel. I mean, at times, senators are compelled to travel in the course of their job. But for me, when such a time comes, I tell them I'm not ready to go. The reason is that, you know, I'm just passionate about my country.
So what part of the Electoral Act?
It's not amendments. It's just to insert that, that after this dispensation, no political party should nominate presidential and vice presidential candidates of the same faith. You know, it's just to ensure that we carry ourselves together. See, in this country, when you talk about political issues, some Nigerians want to come with religion. And we will not give them room to cause problems for our country. Whether you're a Christian or you're a Muslim. Once every religion of the major religion is represented, then there's no noise. The only time you see Nigerians don't talk about the difference between their faith, I'm a Christian, is a Muslim, is that when there's corruption. When people are stealing money in Nigeria, they don't talk about religion.
Yeah, or ethnicity.
You know? So they become one. Everybody suspend Islam, they suspend Christianity when they're stealing money. But when you talk about politics, then they start using religion to manipulate the masses.
And get the votes.
Get the vote.
But will you get the buy-in of your colleagues in the Senate?
You know, what makes a leader is to be able to see what others don't see. When you come up with an idea, it may not die. An idea is to tell people the possibility of problems in the future or solution to the problems that may arise. So if I convince them and they agree, good for the nation. If they don't, a time will come when they write the history of Nigeria, they'll remember somebody had an idea. So it is not for people to agree with me that matters to me. What matters for me is for you to know that I could see a problem later in the future. Because a time could come, we could have a Christian who can be president. And this president may want to say, oh, somebody did this before, I want to do it too. I want to retaliate. Or, you know, we are not equally wired on contemporary issues. Not every Nigerian reason to get to understand that once there's good government in place and there's good governance, nobody cares whether the man is a Christian or the man is a Muslim. Today we have a northerner as president, President Muhammadu Buhari. But do you know they have killed more northerners in Nigeria than they have killed in southern Nigeria? So how do you explain that?
And that is why...
So it's not the issue of where the man comes from. But when you have a large army of people who are taken to religion as a profession, and when you go around the blogs and the internet, you hear the utterances of some Nigerians, they are capable of setting the country on fire. Okay? There are already people moving around like a form of a demonstration. You can't know whether it's a campaign or it's a demonstration. You know? And you can see that there's a problem brewing. For a lawmaker, we have a duty to see how we can minimize such reactions. There are people of faith who are leading their followers to say, no, we have been robbed, no, we have been cheated, no, we are not going to agree. As a party man, I want my party to win election. And in order to give a succor, in order to pacify the Christian, that it was not a policy. Let us do this amendment so that we win hands down. Today, the APC is the only national party that we have. It's the only party that you can say is...
Maybe because you are a member of that party.
No, it's not because that. I stand to submit that the APC is the only national party because there was an agreement and there was amendment in the constitution of political parties that once President Muhammadu Buhari finishes his 8 years, power will shift to the south.
Which most likely it will.
It was only the APC.
Yeah, that.
And the commendation must go to the northern governors, who in their wisdom said, because we want the unity and stability of Nigeria, let all northerners withdraw from the race and let us allow the south to produce the president. And that explains why Bola Tinubu had a free drive.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. If you are just joining us, we are joined in the studio by Barrister Bashir Maidugu, a member of the APC Campaign Council, and Faith Nwadishi, the Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we are going to discuss issues-based engagement ahead of campaigns. But in the land today, in Taraba, the court sacked Emmanuel Bacha as the candidate of the All Progressive Congress, saying no election was held. What is your take, Barrister, briefly on this?
Yes, I think this is the beauty of democracy, because an aggrieved party is naturally, has the natural freedom to go to court to complain, and this is what happened. Not only in Taraba State, in other states, there are so many litigations. In view of that, there are options left for Emmanuel Bacha to appeal, and the Independent National Elections Commission, for now, has no option than to accept the court order. It's a judgment. And therefore, the INEC has no option than to accept what actually, after 30 days, if Senator Emmanuel Bacha does not appeal, then the other person that
took the case,
that was favored in the judgment, will be the candidate of the party. But for now, the situation is that Emmanuel Bacha has been, brought down by the court.
Yes, Faith, what is your take on the recent happening?
I agree that it is the beauty of democracy, and then the role of the courts. Again, we see the role of the judiciary in our electoral processes. On the 28th of this month, presidential campaigns are supposed to start, And then on the 12th of October, the
Yes.
other campaigns will start. And then we have a court that is saying a political party should go back in 14 days and conduct another primaries. It means that it will stall the publication of the names. It will have implication on the electoral process. So we need to find a way to get the judiciary to really support the electoral reforms that are going on and ensure that we keep to the timetable of our elections. If peradventure Emmanuel Butcher goes to court and they reverse that maybe within 30 days, and then INEC is already preparing to go and observe the primaries that will be done in the next 14 days, and then the process starts all over again. There has to be a process where you have a limited time to address pre-election issues, party primary issues, so that when it is time to publish names, on that date you are publishing names because you are done with all of the court cases and all of that. But I still want to say that the judiciary is doing their work, but also in doing their work, look at its implication on, there's a long-term implication of the electoral processes and its outcome.
Most we have a long, election timetable.
Well, 5 months.
In addition to what Madam Pace has said, you see, it is a question of law and order. It's a question of, rule of law. Pre-election matters are matters that are within the jurisdiction of ordinary courts, not tribunals. And because it is a pre-election matter, it can go on for as long as possible, even after the candidate has been sworn in. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
So there's no limit as to when, the litigation on, it can go to Court of Appeal, it can go to Supreme Court. It can take 1 year, 2 years. It's a pre-election
for adjudication.
Matter. Yes, for adjudication. It's a pre-election matter. Election matters have time limits.
Yeah.
So that is the issue. But still, as she has said, we need to actually further our reform process.
What of the role of political parties? Because assuming the APC got it right,
yeah,
while
internal party
conducting the
democracy,
primary,
exactly.
Yes.
Internal party democracy is important in doing this, because party primaries are really the prerogative of the political parties themselves. You don't have an external party. It's within the committee that is set up, the rules and regulations of a political parties. So it's important also that even when we say the judiciary should look at the reforms, I think it is the prerogative of more, the onus lies more on the political parties to ensure that their internal party democracy is well taken care of. Their processes are processes that are very transparent, but you cannot rule out the fact that people cannot be aggrieved. When people are aggrieved, there are other options to be able to address those. But I think that most importantly, political parties should look at their internal party democracy and be able to handle some of these issues before they impact on the political process itself.
Barrister, the other story we flashed, is on...
Let me also comment on what she has said. On internal party democracy, the APC, we, after the primaries of each, election, after the primaries, for House of Assembly, for House of Reps, Senate, governorship, and presidential elections, we have, aside from the elections, committee, the primary election committee, we have a fields committee that looks at, that the elections that was conducted.
But probably they didn't do their work, and that was why the other fellow now went to court.
Well, the issue is, it's a possibility, but I'm telling you what is obtainable in APC. In APC, we have the appeal process up to the National Working Committee.
Yeah.
So when the person is not satisfied with the decisions, is when actually you can go to, or the person can go to court. Okay. And that's what happened with the case of Taraba.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we slot this for another day to discuss more elaborately, because the cases are many in many states. Yes. The other story which we flashed on the screen was the call by the Speaker of the House of Reps to fast track what he called priority bills, for instance, the security architecture, do you think they will have that luxury to now really dwell and come up with something that will impact on the lives of Nigerians at this critical time that they are about to start campaigning?
Well, the call by the Speaker is legitimate because many of them will not come back. Many members of the House of Reps, many senators are not coming back. And we don't know exactly which bills he's talking about that are priority bills, but definitely...
He mentioned the, rejigging the security architecture.
The security is natural. When something is not working, you have to try another thing. That is the situation. We have a situation whereby, our security architecture is compromised in such a way that, for instance, bandits and terrorists are having field day here and there, and because of the inhibitions, placed on certain, security forces in this country, things are not working they should. Financial, for instance, funding issues and some other issues. So this actually is a legitimate call, including, for example, bandits and terrorists, their access to funding.
Yeah, so they should find a way of curtailing it.
Exactly.
Yes, Ma. Don't you think they are running against time? They have less than 8 months or thereabout, elections and all that.
It's true. Well, I agree that it is a legitimate call. But again, the question I want to ask is, at what time were these bills placed before the National Assembly? And what was done all along? You have bills that have been in National Assembly from the first day of the National Assembly, and when it's close to the time they are supposed to leave office, you see them trying to fast track these bills. And there are some other bills that are not so important as this bill that he's mentioning that have been given accelerated hearing. How come we now have a situation whereby a few months to the end of the assemblies of the cycle for the assembly, they are calling? And again, I want to agree, because of the fact that a lot of the members of the National Assembly are not coming back. So a lot of them truly want to write their name down in gold and say, when we are there, we're the ones that passed this bill.
Exactly.
But you see, 4 years, for instance, why is it that it is a few months to the termination of the lifespan of a National Assembly that we have a National Assembly talking about security infrastructure? These are bills that are supposed to have been priority, passed or even deliberated first 100 days in office. And we are going 3.5 years down the line, and suddenly this issue is coming up. So we need to really look, and I'm happy that elections are coming up. If only Nigerians would look at all of these issues and begin to interrogate, especially the role of the legislature. It is not enough for a member of the legislature to come to the community and buy vehicles and do things that is not in the mandate of the legislator to do. We should begin to ask the legislators, how many times have you raised a resolution or a bill that concerns your constituency? Some of them can't even go back to their constituencies.
But they have nothing to offer.
But they want to even stand for election.
All right.
And then, so a few days to the end of the tenure, you are coming to say we are not able to do that. At what point were these bills laid before the National Assembly?
All right. Thank you very much for your take on these two important stories that dominate the scene today. We are joined in the studio by Dr. Abubakar Kari, a lecturer at the University of Abuja. He is also a public commentator. We are also joined by Frank Shaibu, who is the Special Assistant on Public Communication to Atiku Abubakar. Finally, we have Barrister Aliu Lemu, who is a legal practitioner. Together we will discuss the issues. Welcome to the studio, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Let me start with you. Yes. Are you disturbed that this caliber of people are pulling out of the campaign council?
I think to say that I'm disturbed or we are disturbed would be maybe a wrongful use of adjective, because there's no basis to be disturbed. I've said it times with that number that whether the cock crows or not, the sun must rise. And what that means is simple. You see, these sets of people have only left the bedroom for the sitting room. They have not left PDP. They are within the PDP. They are under the umbrella. So there's no basis for anyone to be disturbed. We'll continue our moves as a party to pacify all aggrieved members, because there's nothing new that has been said. The issues they've been raising times and times before now is the same issue they are reiterating. So nothing new has come up. There are no new demands.
But Mr. Frank, if somebody who you have so much confidence in, that who will go and sell your candidature, said he will not campaign for you.
You see, the beautiful thing about 2023 election, like I've always said, is the fact that the APC is doing a very, very beautiful job in campaigning for His Excellency Atiku Abubakar and the PDP. And they've made our job easier, because, you see, Atiku is not aspiring to be president of the PDP. He's aspiring to be president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the election in 2023 is more of a referendum than the normal election that they think. So there is nobody, just like, you see, Nigerians condemned the comments that came from Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Abeokuta before the primary election in the APC, where he said, oh, he made President Muhammadu Buhari cried 3 times, failed 3 times, and even cried on national television that he single-handedly beat his chest, that he made him president. Well, I call him the maker of President Muhammadu Buhari. Forgetting that, you see, power belongs to the Almighty, and he gives it to whom he so desires. So it is not for anybody, no human being can ascribe to himself that power that belongs to God, to say, look, I can make this man president, or I will not make him president.
Yes,
so
Doctor,
the issue, yes.
you heard what Frank said, that no much problem. Do you really subscribe to what he said, the caliber of people living the campaign trail?
Well, I will certainly differ, and I'm a little bit worried for PDP, because the action of the group, for me, amounts to escalation rather than amicable resolution. And again, their position sort of gives the impression that what is happening now is a zero-sum game. You know, zero-sum game, you either win or the other person loses, which means that they are not ready to concede an inch. And considering the fact that the timing is inauspicious, coming few days before the flag off of the campaign, is a worrisome development for the PDP. What should be happening now is a cessation of hostilities, rapprochement, trying to bring all the groups together and to move together. For me, it also gives Atiku Abubakar a rather very, very tricky choice to make. It is either he sacrifices Ayu, who apparently enjoys the support of the mainstream PDP, so to say, in order to pander to Wike, or risk losing a Wike group, who many people tout as formidable. So either of the choices is not easy. Either of the choices will not likely be palatable for Atiku Abubakar. And therefore, I'm really worried for the PDP.
Barrister, Atiku, in his response today, even though he's out of the country, Ayu is also out of the country. He said the choice is Ayu's, one. And then secondly, those calling for Ayu's head should also consider the legal implications. What is your take on this?
Really, the problem is not much of a legal problem. It is a political problem that requires a political solution. But it cannot be divorced from the legal angle. You see, Ayu's emergence as the national chairman of the party is not based on the wills or whims of a particular individual or groups of individuals. Ayu was elected unanimously by the highest decision-making organ of the party, which is the National Convention. The power to remove him does not reside in a single individual or groups of individuals. That power to remove him resides with the same National Convention that brought him into office. That's from the legal perspective. The choice of resigning is an individual choice. But the issues being touted, balance of power, equity, fairness, and justice, all of them do not arise in this scenario.
Why?
This is why. If you are saying, based on the constitution of the party, if the president emerges from a certain part of the country, then the national chairman should emerge from a different part of the country. We are not there yet. Atiku Abubakar is still a candidate. We hope and pray for the sake of the PDP, he wins. Once he wins, that argument now becomes tenable, that we cannot have the president of the country from the same part of the country as the national chairman for equity, fairness, and justice. But it behoves on the party, the Wike group, and all of the individuals who are crying foul to rally around their presidential candidate. All of them should come under the umbrella to make sure that the PDP forms the government at the center. And once they are victorious in that respect, then the issues that they are complaining about will now arise. And then it will be clear for everybody to see, even the deaf will hear and the blind will see that the justice they are talking about is highly deserving.
Frank, you are nodding your head.
Yes.
Do you agree with what he said, that Atiku should become the president first before this balance of power or whatever?
You know, that was succinctly put by the lawyer in the studio. You see, the agitation for a balance of power, I'll give a clinical example. And I'll take my example to Rivers State. The candidate for PDP, of the PDP governorship candidate in Rivers, is from the same zone with the chairman
at present
of the PDP at present, under Governor Wike. Rotimi Amechi is from Ikwere. Celestino may hear that Rotimi Amechi took over from, via a court judgment, was from the same Ikwere zone, Ikwere kingdom, from the same axis, from the same family. Yeah. Now, when Rotimi Amechi was rounding off his tenure, he said, look, we need to shift power to the Ijaw people, the riverine areas. Governor Wike, they were of the same political stock. He said, no, I want to be governor. He aspired. He contested. He won election. For 16 years, one region, I've been governor in Rivers. The people of Rivers have not killed anybody. Before Ayu emerged as chairman of the PDP, we had not just somebody from the South, we had somebody from Rivers State who was chairman of the party. You see, sometimes I tell people, I say, a bitter heart is not capable of charity. You understand? You know, a bitter heart is not capable of charity. When you're talking about choices, the choice is not that of Atiku to make. Atiku Abubakar, he does not even have the powers to remove. It is not within his powers to say he wants to remove the national chairman of a party. That would be a gross violation of the rules and ethics of the political party. We are not a pressure group. We're a political party.
But is there...
With profound respect. No, okay. I need to land here.
Okay.
You see, it is not within the powers of Atiku to remove Ayu.
Yeah, we have stated this clearly.
That is one.
Yeah.
Number two, whatever he wants to do will only be in an advisory capacity. He can always say, come, gentlemen, let's do this. I think we should do this and all that.
But if he knows something will not actually support or encourage, harmony in the party, and it will affect his candidacy, don't you think he has this power to now say, okay, Mr. Ayu?
Let me ask you a question. Before the primary election, we had the Governor Wike even at the venue of the convention. Oh, he came, got to the podium, he got the microphone. After canvassing for votes from the delegates, he made one last comment. He said, look, today, I want to declare that whoever emerges at this convention, I will support the person with everything that I have and all that. And he got a rousing ovation. The issue is this, what has suddenly changed?
Yes, I think Doctor should come in here because you see, former governor of Plateau State, Jonah Jang, said it's like there was certain undercurrents at the convention ground because suddenly Tambuwal now said he withdrew for, and he mentioned that he withdrew for Atiku. If not for that, it will have been, maybe there will be a runoff or something like that.
You see, the reality is what is playing out is still the aftermath of the primaries. And that is why I'm so worried, because we have always said, and with very good reasons, that we have democracy in Nigeria, but we don't have democrats. in a democracy, in an election, in a contest, somebody must win and somebody must lose. And immediately after the outcome of an election has been declared, all people who have contested and their supporters ordinarily
should rally round
the winner. And Wike made a commitment that he was going to do that. But immediately after, now it appears that they are using as an alibi the withdrawal, personal, voluntary withdrawal of Aminu Waziri Tambuwal.
Welcome back to the program. Gentlemen, welcome. We also actually we made mistake while introducing you. You are the special advisor to the chairman of Fiscal Responsibility Commission, exactly. Not Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Prof, maybe I should start with you. The world economy is truly suffering.
Yeah.
But why is Africa worst affected?
Well, African countries are largely frontier economies, what we call frontier economies. They are developing economies. And to that extent, they appear very vulnerable to shocks, global shocks. And as you know, most of them are countries that depend on primary products. So you now find that what is happening in Africa is a fallout of what's currently going on in the world today. It's largely on account of the Russian-Ukraine war. As you know, the world economy was gradually emerging from the negative impact of COVID, and then we now came face to face with the Russian-Ukraine conflict. So the Russian-Ukraine conflict, just as we saw in the case of COVID, has caused a lot of supply chain disruptions. Energy crisis, globally. Of course, you know that for a long time, oil price, was in excess of $100 per barrel. And for import-dependent economies, that had the effect of shooting up energy prices. So you find that in the US, for example, inflation rate has gone to unprecedented levels, now above 8%. In the UK, inflation rate too is now above 8%, unprecedented. And you now find the economies of these two countries, the Federal Reserve, for example, just increased the interest rate in the US, by 75 basis points. And today, again, the Bank of England has also increased their benchmark rate by 50 basis points. So what that does is that each time you find interest rates go up in US, or each time you find the dollar firming up, that has the effect of triggering capital flows into the US, out of Africa, out of emerging economies, out of frontier economies, into these economies, because interest rates have gone up. So what African economies are experiencing now, is just a response to some of the actions, again, being taken by the economic managers in the US, in the UK, in the Eurozone, in general. So their actions, are also affecting African economies. And that's why you find that in Africa now, just as you mentioned in your introduction, a lot of African countries are also going through the pains of inflation. Zimbabwe, for example, Zimbabwe's inflation rate has risen, that's the highest in Africa, by over 285%.
Oh my God.
Yes, you just mentioned that of Ghana, 33.9%.
Yeah.
Ethiopia, 32%. Some of these countries actually depend on Russia and Ukraine for wheat imports. Okay, and because of the, as I said, disruptions we've had, you now find that it's also affecting them, negatively. In the case of Nigeria, yes, bulk of our imports of wheat, don't come from Russia or Ukraine. As a matter of fact, the US. But as I said, what is happening in the US is also affecting us, indirectly. Okay, aside the legacy issues we have had, the issue of energy cost, is also prominent. And why is energy cost going up? Because again, oil price is going up. And unfortunately, we are an import-dependent nation. We import petroleum products. Because we are importing petroleum products, okay, the price of fuel, diesel, for example, you saw how the price of diesel went up.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
800, 900.
Yeah, so all these eventually feed into the cost of production. As a matter of fact, the inflation we are experiencing in Nigeria today, just as we have in other countries. In Ghana, for example, is also related. They are cost push, induced, in the sense that they are primarily caused by the rising cost of production, as opposed to the demand pull. So it's not as if we really have too much money in circulation, chasing too few goods, but it's more because cost of production is rising. Cost of energy also feeds into cost of transportation. So you find high cost of transport also resulting in inflation. And that's why you find the urban inflation rate, for example, being higher than the rural inflation.
Yes, we will discuss that one also, because it's really a serious problem.
And the pressure points, really, the pressure points for this inflation, is on food. Food inflation rate is, over 23%, as a matter of 23.1%.
Yeah, yes,
okay.
I want Mr. Wadoka to come in here, because you are in charge of fiscal responsibility, and currency in Africa, for instance, is just falling. We cited example of Ghana, which is so far divorced, despite the redenomination they did. How are you coping now in maybe putting Nigeria's currency vis-a-vis that of other African countries?
Exchange rate of a nation is also tied to the productive capacity of the nation, its earnings, as it were, and its ability to pay for what it buys. So it's the same issue that's still going around. The weakness in the exchange rate is the same things that are triggering inflation are triggering weakness in the exchange rate.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not an isolated issue. It's a broad issue and must be looked at broadly. The very pressures from, you mentioned, Professor Waleke mentioned, from the Ukraine-Russia war are translating into difficulties in exchange rates being sustained. So you find those pressures. In Nigeria, we're having our own fair share of the pressure. Other countries as well are having their own share of the pressure.
Yeah. Prof, in 2000, this issue of, I'm coming down to Africa, West Africa, this echo that they wanted to flood. Since 2000, almost 22 years after, it is still in the pipeline, as they said. Don't you think, assuming we had that currency, it will have maybe absorbed some of these shocks for West Africa?
Yeah, there's no doubt that a common currency for West Africa would go a long way in, facilitating even trade, intra-trade, within West Africa. One of the challenges that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, is going to face is also the issue of, the absence of a common currency. Just as you mentioned, there have been efforts in the past, to even, fast track it, given its, importance in facilitating trade. But of course, there have been hindrances. And one of the major hindrances to having a common currency for West Africa is even this issue of what we are talking about. Because for you to have a common currency, there's what is called a convergence criteria.
Okay.
Yes, one of the convergence, one of the criteria or a criterion, has to do with having, a stable,
trade maybe.
No, I'm talking of inflation.
Okay.
Yes, you don't have to have high inflation rate. Okay, if countries within West Africa are experiencing inflation rate, it will also affect their ability to have a common currency.
Oh.
Now, the inflation has a correlation to exchange rates. Because eventually when you have a common currency, it's also going to, you're also going to determine its exchange rate in relation to other world currencies. Now, if inflation rate is high, what happens? Purchasing power, drops.
Yeah.
Is that not so? And if purchasing power, drops, as we are witnessing here and also in Ghana, what usually happens is that people begin to lose confidence in the local currency. And when they lose confidence, begin to lose confidence in local currency, what is the next thing, rational people do? They now try to, go for the currency they feel is stable, is strong. And that's why I said, anytime you find the dollar appreciating, okay, or inflation rate in the local, economy is rising, vis-a-vis the inflation rate in the US, okay? So what happens is that people tend to now go for the dollar. And as they go for the dollar, what happens? As they demand more of the dollar,
the higher the demand, the higher the
exchange rate now
yes.
for that goes up. So you can see how inflation also fits into exchange rate.
Yeah.
So as long as we have this inflation problem in West Africa, okay, it's also going to be difficult. Apart from other challenges, it's going to be difficult for us to now say we are going to have a common currency. There are also other issues, including reserves, for example. If you're going to have a common currency, or let us even assume that the naira, will be used. We want to now see how we can make
the rallying point.
Exactly. You need to have, very strong reserves, to be able to back that up. So when countries within West Africa don't have reserves that are not productive, just as I said, okay, if you're not productive, okay, it will eventually tell on your currency. And to that extent, it will be difficult for you to now say you're going to have, a common currency. For you to have a common currency, there must be a level playing ground, and that's what they mean by convergence, criteria. So for the entire economies, in West Africa, I think 16, 15 West African states, inflation should run at single digit sustainably for the next, I think they say 7 or 10 years. But again, that is, something that has been difficult to happen. Having single-digit inflation rate for all West African countries, for a period of time.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics, and today we are going to discuss the SWOT analysis conducted by the Center for Democratic Development, CDD. Once again, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, before we go into the recommendations, the observations you made, what you asked the federal government, INEC, and other stakeholders to do in order to get it right, I would like to ask you, because we just came out of the Kenyan election, what was your take?
I think the Kenyan elections was quite an interesting one, and it's one that every election watcher and citizen should note, particularly the political parties. There were so many things that were striking in the Kenyan elections. One was that with very good infrastructural development, elections could be as seamless as possible. Now, the first point is that the Kenyan actually deployed the Kim's kit, which is a replica of the BVAS that Nigeria will be utilizing in the elections.
It's just the name that differs.
It's just the name. Like maybe. They almost do the same thing, really. And it was quite interesting that in most of the villages, they had the 4G network. They had very good road network to actually move election logistics. And the training of the staff, the ad hoc staff too, who conducted the elections was well done. So the rate of accreditation voting will be an average of 3 minutes actually. And it was so far so good, a very seamless, well-organized exercise on one hand. And that well-organized exercise, we must also attribute the fact that aside from the character of the people, the training, the infrastructure, the available infrastructure also positively impacted on deployment of election logistics. Now, the second and very important issue we should also note in the elections was the way the political parties were able to form a coalition for these elections. In the real sense, it's more of an alliance as against a merger, because they just came together and everybody came with their strength. So with the two big coalition out of the four parties vying the elections, the Azimio of the Raila Odinga, and of course the William Ruto, Kenya Kwanza, people came with their strength. So let's assume we have 8 parties. At the end of the vote, you will find that some of those parties did not win as much seats as the UDA. They just won 3 states, some senatorial streets. Merged and put together, they were able to successfully win the elections. They only aligned at that point for the presidential elections, which made the structure at the end of the day to be well organized and not unwidely. And one thing that our politicians should also learn is that in a very close elections, you do not actually, you need alliances such as that, and you do not need a spoiler. Put together, the two other parties that vied would have at least almost a 1%, while the winning candidate won just by less than 2% or around 2% at the end of the day. So close elections are quite important, really, and messaging resonates with people. So what is the message? The whole thing about this hustler, the campaign, ethnicity was big, but it was not the defining character of that elections. It was more about issues and what citizens feel resonated with them and could actually change their lives, and the importance of the youth vote.
But you see, there was this fear ahead of the elections. Did you expected that it will degenerate maybe into serious
By
crisis?
the elections, I think one thing that was very interesting is that even the actors themselves, 3-4 days to the elections, agreed that there is actually a progression compared to the 2017 elections. So they weren't worried. They felt there will be skirmishes in some places like Kisumu and but volatile areas, but it will never go back to the 2007 experience, nor even by 2013. So they've seen a progression with each elections. And this was quite useful for the people. And and with the way they've actually created institutions in response to the multicultural nature of the country, their lived experience. In fact, if you ask me what was the most striking thing I got, the fact that they had a national commission on social cohesion. National commission? Yes.
What is different with our national orientation agency?
No, it's not an orientation agency. So this commission does a lot of things aside from orienting people. It's also an accountability platform. It monitors the issues of hate speeches. It monitors the issues of fake news in elections. It's not just balancing, it is also responding. And it was a real institution, so you will see how they will give rules to Facebook and say, if you don't do this, we can shut you down. If you don't do that, we can shut you down. It wasn't perfect, but it was somewhere to actually start from.
Okay.
It was somewhere to start from. So they've been developing with each passing elections, with what their challenges are. And starting from the constitution, to all sundries electoral laws, to commissions that will deal with issues of ethnicity and social cohesion. So they had all these structures in place, and all these structures together work to create something.
The coalescing of force of sorts.
You know? So it was kind of a positive, because they weren't perfect, not like they weren't issues that were like that, but even as observers who have watched elections, who have watched Kenyan elections, we could all see that there was an improvement in the elections.
Okay. You made mention of deployment of 5G.
4G I mean, in most of the places, yes.
You asked questions on that, how they were able to
It's about infrastructures, really. I think one thing you will note is that the light rarely went off. Most of the places, they do not have generating sets. Like somebody like myself, I observed elections by the border with Uganda around Bugoma. And that's like a village-like setting. It's not like in the capital city of Nairobi. And those hotels, it's not like staying in Hilton, it's not even like staying in Chelsea of Nigeria. You can just imagine when you are in the hinterland how an hotel will look like. But for like the 3-4 days we were on the field,
no problem.
No problem.
Wow.
No light going off, where you would already be very scared that imagine, are they going to bring a lantern or they will bring a rechargeable lamp?
So is it a real down for democracy in Africa, what you saw in
I
Kenya?
think like it's a new dawn. It shows eventually, even with institutions, that institutions matters. You saw the way they filed the case, you saw the way they dispensed with the case in around 14 days, and the new president has been sworn in. And even in spite of the fact that the Raila Odinga, who is like an institution unto himself, lost the elections, even in his own stronghold, the kind of skirmishes that would actually have previously happened did not happen. It tells a story that people are evolving and knowing that you cannot actually trade your life for a politician. People also are learning that you have to vote on issues, even if there might be sentiment in some instances. But what is at stake is really a better life for us as people. And I think importantly, infrastructures are important. Because in every elections, we come and say, INEC has not deployed, INEC has not done this, INEC. Yes, they too, they may likely have planning challenges. But how many votes are motorable?
Yeah, and this will take us to our subject of discussion today, the SWOT analysis you conducted. I wanted to ask, what was the motivation behind commissioning that SWOT analysis?
I think it's one of our work as the CDD. Like we say that our work is actually to influence policy, but through evidence. So it's not just about advocacy. All our work is evidence-driven. And we would not want to start engaging actors without doing the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities ahead of the 2023 elections. And this is just the first out of several reports we will actually be unveiling ahead of the elections and, of course, post-elections as well. And for every elections, it's also about planning. Stakeholders have to plan, not just the election management bodies, but even the media. Where can they go? What can they do differently? What can they do differently? What can the not-for-profit sector do? And what the candidates should actually be looking at ahead of these elections. And I think these are very, very important. And you would have seen that the SWOT analysis have already put up some very salient issues that requires planning ahead of the elections. Some salient issues that as actors we also have to avert our mind to, either as stakeholders or even political actors who are involved in these elections.
Is this the first time you call it SWOT? Because when the report came out, of course, here in Daily Trust, we took time to look at it, to report it extensively. Is it a new creation?
It's not a new creation. It's just one of the several products that we do during the elections. But this is our first background paper ahead of the elections. Then on a monthly basis, we do the political and security analysis. Then we do the fake news observatory. And then we'll have the trend analysis, which we have always done with each elections to look at the historical analysis of elections, such that we know who is going to vote this way, how this party has voted since 1960, 1960, 63, 1966 to 79, 83, and to all the successive 6 elections that we've had since 1999, and see if there is anything that will change. I think bringing evidence to bear is our homework, and that's our mandate as CDD.